Guys, coming to you live from the world's hottest school. We're going to talk about comparing and ordering integers, and this is our learning goal that says I can compare and order integers. Probably seems kind of obvious. So the first thing we need to know if we want to compare and order integers is what are integers? Integers are just a certain set of numbers, so just one type or one category of numbers that includes whole numbers and their opposites. Whole numbers are numbers like counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they start with 0. So just numbers that you would count, the first ones you encountered in kindergarten, those are your whole numbers. Opposites, we're going to talk about in just a second what that means. That's on my next slide. But right now, what you need to know is that adds in negative numbers. So whole numbers are all positive. Remember back in kindergarten, we didn't know anything about negative numbers. We just knew about our normal counting numbers. And then opposites are the ones that are negative. So when you think about integers, these are numbers that don't have any fraction or decimal part to them. And they can be either positive, negative, or 0. So here's the definition for opposites. They are two numbers that are the same distance from 0, but in opposite directions. So if we look at a number line here, 0 goes right in the middle, 2 and negative 2 are opposites of each other. Because if you look, the positive 2 is 2 units away from 0. And then negative 2 is also 2 units away from 0. So they're the exact same distance away from 0, but they're in opposite directions. So those are opposites of each other. And opposites come in pairs. It's just any two numbers that are the same distance from 0 but in opposite directions. So 4 and negative 4, 1 and negative 1, 100, negative 100. Those are all opposite pairs of each other. They're all the same distance from 0 but in opposite directions. So now coming back to my definition of integers, if you look at this Venn diagram, the first circle here includes only whole numbers. So all of these numbers in this first circle are whole numbers. Those again are just our basic counting numbers, starting with 0 and going all the way up as far to infinity, positive infinity. So 1, 27, 2, 17, 12, 368, those are all numbers that are positive numbers and they don't have any fraction or decimal part to them. These numbers in the other circle are all numbers that are the opposite of whole numbers. Now 0 is included in this set because it's its own opposite. So the opposite of 0, well, 0 is 0 distance from 0. It's its own opposite. These numbers all also have no fraction or decimal part to them, but they're negative. So the opposite of 1, which is a whole number, is negative 1. The opposite of 27 is negative 27. But the mistake that a lot of people make is they think that integers come in pairs because we talk about whole numbers and their opposites. Any number that would fall into these two circles, I draw a really floppy line there. Any number that is within these two circles on this Venn diagram would be an integer. So negative 7 by itself is an integer. 2 by itself is an integer. The final definition that we're going to talk about today is absolute value. And absolute value just means a number's distance from 0. We're talking about these two numbers. Remember, we have the two opposites of negative 2 and positive 2. They are both 2 units away from 0. So remember, they're both the same exact distance away from 0. Now, if we're talking about absolute value is the number that describes how far away from 0 a number is. So the absolute value of 2 is its distance, positive 2. Distances are always positive. You can't walk negative 1 block. You can't walk negative 1 mile. So distances are always positive. So the distance of negative 2 from 0 is 2. The distance of positive 2 from 0 is also 2. So the absolute value of both of these numbers would be 2. We show absolute value with these straight up and down lines. They kind of look like parentheses, but not exactly. So these lines right here, these are my absolute value symbols. Anytime you see those straight up and down parentheses or straight up and down lines, those are the absolute value symbol. So that means take and figure out what this number's distance from 0 is. So again, if we're talking about the absolute value of -8, it's how far away from 0 is -8. So if I look, -8 is 8 units away from 0. So its absolute value would be 8. So you just write that. The absolute value of -8 equals 8. Now I'm looking at the absolute value of +8. Well, +8 is also 8 units away from 0. So the absolute value of +8 is also 8. So again, absolute value is a number's distance from 0, and it's always going to be positive. So if I have absolute value of a negative number, that's positive. Absolute value of a positive number, also positive. Always positive because it's a distance. The other thing we're talking about in this section is comparing integers. And when I compare integers, I'm basically just saying what is the size of those numbers? Which one's bigger, which one's smaller? So I could do that with 2 numbers, or I can do that with multiple numbers in a row. If I do that with 2 numbers, let's say I want to compare -9 and -8. So I want to say which one of those is bigger. Well, if I think about on a number line, here's -9 right here, and here's -8 right here. When I'm talking about negative numbers, the further away I get from 0, the smaller the number is. If I have -$100 in my bank account, that's a smaller number than just having -$1 in my bank account. So when I want to compare those two numbers, I'm going to use the greater than and less than symbols. I remember if you're thinking about the greater than and less than symbols as a mouth, the greater than symbol or less than symbol, the mouth always points towards the bigger number so it can eat the more amount, the larger amount. So -9 is smaller than -8 because it's further away from 0. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a less than symbol to show that -9 is less than -8. So if you get confused about those symbols, you just read it from left to right. So what am I saying about -9? I'm saying it's less than -8. So that's what that symbol in the middle is, a less than symbol, and it's eating the larger number. If I want to compare two other numbers, let's say I want to compare -36 to -47. Now this doesn't appear on my number line, but I can think, okay, which one of those is further away from 0? -47 is going to be even further away from 0 than -36. So that's actually the smaller number. So now I'm going to use the other symbol, the greater than symbol. And remember, it's just always eating the larger number. And I would read that -36 is greater than -47. If I'm talking about comparing more than two numbers, then usually all you'll have to do is just put them in order from least to greatest. So let's say I wanted to take all of these numbers and put them in order from least to greatest. So I'm going to start with the very smallest number. I have negative numbers here, so I'm looking for the one that is furthest away from 0. So I would start with -47, and then I would have -36, and then I have -9, and then I have -8. So, and now I'm done with my negative numbers. 0 always goes right in between my positive and my negative and my positive numbers. And then I'm just going to put the rest of these in order just as we would any numbers. They're just positive, so they're pretty easy to think about. And there you go. I've put them in order from least to greatest. So starting with my negative numbers, furthest away from 0, and then moving all the way up to my positive numbers. Here's your free response question. So pause the video now and answer that. Here's your multiple choice question. Again, pause the video and answer this question.